This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. And now, here's your host, Itamar Shafir.
Welcome to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we talk with successful marketing experts about ways to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Our guest today is a Google Ads maven. More than 200,000 students enrolled in his best-selling marketing courses on Udemy. He is currently the founder and CEO of one of New York's fastest-growing ad agencies, AdVenture, managing over 500 clients from small to millions of dollars of ad budgets. I'm excited to say hello to Mr. Isaac Rudansky. Hi, Isaac.
Hey, Itamar, how are you? Thanks for having me on the show today.
I'm great, and I'm excited to have you on. You are a true Google ad expert, but before we jump into it and how we can help the listeners with Google Ads for their agency to sell it and maybe to help them get leads for themselves, can you tell us a little bit about your past and how you got into this business?
Sure. I actually stumbled into this business back in 2012, 2013. I was trying to figure out a way to get traffic to a website that I made to sell some of my artwork. I was recently married. I was in a master's program. I was trying to make some money on the side. I like to paint. And I was doing art shows all over Long Island, New York, sort of lugging my canvases around. And I thought like it would be really great if I could sell some of the stuff online. So I made a really quick, simple website. And then after sending my mother and a cousin, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to actually get people who might want to buy some of this stuff to the website? And I stumbled into what was called Google AdWords at the time. It's now called Google Ads. And I was an internet user. I used Google every day, but I had no idea Google was an advertising company. It was totally new to me. And it fascinated me because there was this interesting balance between immediacy. You could launch a campaign and have clicks coming to your website, in 10 minutes. It's like, that's incredible. Like, where else could you get something like that? And there's a real science to it also. Understanding keywords, understanding bids, understanding how the auction works, understanding the competitive nature of your specific industry or niche. So it was a game, and it was an exciting game, and it was fun. And I spent a long time reading everything I could, learning everything I could, finding every trick that I could. And eventually I said, maybe I'll teach people to make some more money on the side. Maybe I'll teach people what I've learned about Google Ads. So that lasted for about 24 hours because I made another website saying, hey, I'll teach you how to do Google Ads for like, $800 or something. And I suspected that people would rather me do it for them than teach them. So I took down that website and I made a new website promoting services, management services. Like, I'll manage your Google Ads campaigns for you. And I started with, friends, family. It's the same advice I give out to my students now who ask me how to get into the business. And I worked really hard. So even on clients, so to speak, that fundamentally was pro bono work. Pro bono is just a fancy term for saying I couldn't get paid, but I worked really hard. Like, I did as good of a job as I could possibly do. And I spent as much time and effort and energy on those free accounts as I would spend now on any of our largest client accounts. And that provided some invaluable experience, some really good learning opportunities, a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes that I was able to learn from. And slowly but surely, revamping the website, working on my own skills, working on new client accounts. I was able to sign a few more clients, and I was working by myself at the time. I didn't take it that seriously. I worked very hard. That's just my nature, but I didn't take it so seriously as like, oh, this is going to be my career. I just liked it. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting. I was working for myself. But slowly but surely, over time, I started taking it a little bit more seriously, thinking, hey, maybe this could actually be a career. When I hired my first like full-time employee, and then my second, and I was like, okay, now I have real like legitimate responsibility. People are relying on me, and it turned into like, okay, we're going to have an agency, and we've grown a lot over the years. A big part of that growth, as you know, is the content that we've created, some of the courses, and those courses that where I teach Google Ads, I teach Facebook advertising, I teach landing page optimization. Those courses have been a really healthy source of leads for the agency too, especially over the first couple of years that those courses were released. And sort of it snowballed, and we've grown steadily, but not aggressively over the last 5-6 years. My focus has never been on growth at all costs. I've always been more of like, interested in the work and interested in dealing with clients. And we've grown naturally, organically. So that's where we are. That's how I got into the business.
So looking back at your experience, and let's say a lot of our listeners are small marketing agencies and they're looking for ways to scale, but like you said, they're not expecting to go from 10 customers to 10,000. Just want to, double, triple, and so on and so forth. Would you say content marketing is the best strategy? Are you even utilizing Google Ads for yourself?
I think content marketing is a great strategy. And especially for, I don't really see how an agency, let's say a digital advertising agency, someone like ourselves, or an advertising agency, could really go far without some degree of content marketing. Now you have to define what content marketing is. Going to an event and giving a really good presentation and then networking over a beer afterwards, to me, falls under the category of content marketing. Like you've created a piece of content and you've delivered it in a format that is live and in person. And, you might call it event marketing, but okay, call whatever you want. But at the end of the day, what you've done is you've created some piece of content that helps people understand your validity, your knowledge, your expertise, and how you might be able to help them. You've produced a desire for someone to work with you, and then you followed up. So to me, that's what I call content marketing. And I think it's very important in the agency service world because it's very driven by relationships. It's not driven by impulse. These aren't impulse purchases. So if you're selling, I don't know, here's like replica guitar trinkets. So it's like an impulse purchase, right? You don't really need, it's like, I see it. Oh, that's interesting. That'll look good on my desk. I want it. How much does it cost? I could afford it. Okay, great. I'm going to buy it. Right. So it's a whole different type of thing. When somebody hires a service-based business or an agency, they want to feel like they really trust you, that they understand your expertise. They understand that you've solved similar problems before. So let's say take case studies, for example. I'm a huge proponent of case studies. Now, everyone has case studies, but most case studies online today are really poor, which is a good opportunity for anyone listening because it's not that difficult to create case studies that will actually work for you, that will actually market your business. So typically you'll see a case study, so you'll have a couple big results and it's like, okay, click here to work with us. That's not a case study. To me, a case study is something which you clearly outline the struggle, the challenges in the account, what you had to overcome. If you made mistakes along the way, you write about those. Then you explain how you overcame those mistakes. You explain if you overshot or you underachieved the client goal. Why? What did your team learn from this experience? It's a good case study reveals the inside workings of your team, the inside workings of your agency. That's what a good case study really does. So when we produce case studies on our website, we put a huge focus on being thorough, being clear, being transparent, being useful. And it's pretty often a client will tell us, and when I ask a prospect of why they signed with us, they'll say, well, we read this case study or that case study, and it's like, wow, you really solved this similar problem for another company. We're having the same challenges. That content marketing is important. I do think it's a great avenue, but it has to be done right, and it has to be done consistently. The biggest reason why most content marketing programs fail is because brands stop doing it. They try for a month, they put out a couple case studies, they put out a blog post, and they're like, okay, well, we haven't grown by 2x, so it must not be working. It's the type of thing that starts off very slow. It bears very little fruit, but over time you have a compound interest on your content.
On your investment.
It's like
yeah.
a flywheel. You need to have multiple things going. It has to be going consistently. You can't be discouraged. You have to really keep your eye on the prize and keep slogging through, even when it seems like it's not working, because that's how content marketing works. As far as your second question, we don't really leverage Google Ads for ourselves, ironically, only because it doesn't tend to bring in the types of leads that we chosen to work with. We used to, and we used to do Google Ads pretty successfully, where we were signing smaller businesses, but our agency, like, we've made a decision to have fewer clients, but we wanted to work with larger businesses that have larger budgets. It's the way our team is configured. It's the type of experts we're hiring. It's not true for every agency, and there's perfectly fine, extremely successful agencies that are dealing with smaller budgets, smaller businesses that would be a perfect fit for Google Ads campaign. But for us, it's not something that we typically leverage.
Got it. So let me follow up on that question in two ways. One is, what would you define as, the smallest budget you would recommend an agency to touch? And I do think there is such a thing. I don't think we should recommend people starting up in agencies to touch any budget, especially where it comes to Google Ads, where it has a lot of management, maybe not so much margins like you have maybe on other things. And what's your minimum? What wouldn't you, back in the day when you got started, what would you touch, even though you got started?
Back in the day when I got started, there's nothing I wouldn't touch, because I didn't turn down work. So if there was, and maybe that's wrong, maybe that's right, it's just how I did it, right? Like, if there was someone willing to pay me, I had to put food on the table, I took the business. Over time, and a lot of businesses are going to ultimately follow that same trajectory, right? Like, before that, I took any job that wouldn't pay me, because I just wanted to get experience, and I wanted to get, a testimonial. I wanted to get a case study. I wanted to learn from mistakes. But I think a good general rule of thumb for, let's say, Google Ads would be like $10,000, $15,000 a month. It still depends, right? There are still cases for maybe a very hyper local business, a florist, a plumber, a power washing company, or it's a really boutique e-commerce joint selling something very specific, like, I don't know, high-end imported ink for fountain pens that you can't find on Amazon. So, like, there might be cases where you could find search volume and you carve out a profitable campaign on a much smaller budget. But I think a fair general rule of thumb is, if a company is coming to you and saying, "Hey, we have $500, and wow, your guy, we want to tap into the magic of Google advertising," it's like, it's not going to work in most cases, because there's a big misconception. While Google is the only, let's say there's Microsoft, but it's not as relevant. It's this highly luxurious advertising network, because you could show your products to people at the time that they're searching for them. Like, it doesn't exist anywhere. There's no such thing in advertising. It's wild, right? And it's exciting. And on top of that, I only pay when somebody comes into my store. I only pay when I get a click. I don't pay at all. If my ad is shown 1 million times and I don't get a click, don't get a penny bill from Google. It's like an unbelievable pitch. Who wouldn't want to be in that game? And the double-edged sword is, everyone's in that game. And it's a live auction system similar to eBay. Like, take eBay as an example. You can have any product in the world that you want. It's this unbelievable thing. Right. But there's other people who want those products, and they're going to be bidding on those products based on their own paradigm of value. So translate that into Google. Your competitors are real businesses that have well-oiled machines, that have they understand how to extract more revenue over the course of the lifetime of a customer, and they're not going to roll over and just let you win. They're going to be bidding as aggressively as they possibly can. There's a misconception that Google is this great equalizer, that it levels the playing field. It's totally not true. Nothing could be further from the truth. It absolutely does not level the playing field. It still favors a meritocracy of better, more efficient, more profitable businesses. Because the more profitable your business is, the larger your brand is, the more ways you're figuring out of pulling every penny of revenue. It's a 100,000% capitalistic structure at its core. Because if a business, it's a fair system, it's a fair auction, but it's not a level playing field. If your business is worse If you're not extracting as much revenue, if your website isn't designed well enough where your conversion rate is as high or better than competitors, then you're not going to be able to afford a higher cost per click.
Right.
The other 4, 5, 6 competitors in the auction can afford a higher cost per click because their business logistics are more efficient, and therefore you're going to be pushed out of the auction.
And when we're
So
talking about, smaller local businesses like, a divorce attorney in Atlanta, and obviously there are other divorce attorneys that are advertising on Google at the same time, but it's not, huge budgets, national companies that have a very sophisticated marketing team. It's still small attorney companies, local companies, maybe 2 branches. Is it still that aggressive? Is the bid somehow influenced by the national maybe campaigns? How does that work?
in fact, sometimes we find the most aggressive, highest cost campaigns are local campaigns because it's a much more, it's a tougher fight. There's less, it's more scarce. When if you're a divorce attorney in Atlanta, let's say, forget a divorce attorney, let's say you're a mesothelioma attorney in Atlanta. Some of these clicks are well over $1,000 a click.
Wow.
In highly localized areas, because a mesothelioma case could land a law firm $1 million in profit if they close them. And there's not only one mesothelioma lawyer in Dallas or Atlanta, there's going to be a handful. And there's only 3 or 4 ads on the page that are relevant. It's like the top 3 ads, like they get the lion's share of the clicks. So as long as there's more than 3 people or 2 other competitors besides for you, and there almost always will be, bidding on terms that you want to bid on, it could get even more aggressive and more ruthless in a smaller market because those other competitors are living and dying to a greater extent, so to speak, on each impression.
So it kind of creates again a double-edged sword where you're saying, okay, I'm a local agency. My competitive edge is by the fact that I am local and I can create a local rapport with the local business owners. But then when I come and work with them, I'm stuck in a situation where I actually need more budget than I would if I was working with them on a national level.
It might not necessarily be more budget. Like typically your budget will expand when you're expanding geographically just on the basis of there being more search volume to capture.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean the campaigns will be more profitable. Like your returns might not necessarily go up. A lot of it's very common for national or international businesses to launch a campaign in one market. We're working with a company now, a large sports betting company that's launching in the U.S. They're big overseas. They're launching in the U.S. and they're starting just in Colorado. It happens to be that sports betting is not legal in every state in the U.S. yet, but it's legal in I don't know 10 or 15 states. But they're launching just in Colorado because it's a test market. They want to sort of see the results and learn what their KPI should be and build a playbook that could be used to expand to the rest of the market. So it's very common for a national company to start off in a specific zip code or a specific state or a specific geography.
Got it. So, okay. So going back to the small businesses, we're still stuck in a situation where you're saying, okay, where you're saying it could be, your ROI might not be as good because of the high competition taking up the price per click. But you really have no choice, as most local agencies do go after local businesses. And in that space, you're saying, okay, 10,000 to 15,000. What about, a lot of the agencies we work with that I know are taking, the $2,000 to $5,000 budgets with 15 to 20% kind of management fees. Excuse me, not management fees, profit margins on top of management fees. The day, 15% management fees, let's say, and another 15 to 20% on top of that. They get to 30, 35% of budget in fees taken from the client on $2,000 to $5,000 campaigns. Have you been through that trenches of doing those type of campaigns?
Yeah. There's a few things there. So this gets more into like different structures for billing clients. I always stay away from anything profit oriented because profit is a really tough thing to get a handle on. Again, it depends on the business. So if you have a business that really sells one product or one service, and it's very clear what the profit margin is, So then it's like, okay, it's the same, you're really just taking a cut of revenue, right? So for example, I don't know, let's say you have a dentist and the dentist says, okay, we get, $5,000 we for per patient, but our profit's only $1,000 on every patient. So we'll give you 10%, we'll give you $100 per patient.
This podcast is brought to you by Umbrella. Have an agency? Check out umbrellaus.com to grow it today.
So that doesn't so then mathematically you could look at that either as a percentage of profit or a percentage of revenue. It doesn't make a difference because it's like a very standard agreed upon profit. Once you get into like more complex businesses and they go to the agency, will give you a percentage of profit. But like, okay, well, how are you calculating profit? Are there investor dividends? Is there overhead?
Right.
Does profit get calculated based on rent and hiring, on members draw? It's like, it's a mess. So we very frequently will charge a retainer fee plus a bonus model where we'll say, if we exceed targets on sales, or we exceed targets on revenue, or we exceed targets on return on ad spend, on ROI, we start earning bonuses based on those benchmarks. But we've rarely, only once or twice have we done it where we've charged no retainer fee at all, like no management fee, and just have done a percentage of sales. And in those cases, it's worked out because like we sort of scoped out the product and the project, and we felt relatively confident that it would work out well. And then there's a separate angle of just taking equity in the business. So there are times with our clients where whatever the reason was, it made the most sense to go to the client, or the client came to us and say like, look, we don't have cash to pay you, but we'll give you equity in the business. And we've done that. And again, it's on a case-by-case basis where we feel strongly enough about the company and about the brand that we're excited about having an equity position.
Okay. And what about, what about the structure, which is what I thank you for the answer. It gave it, it opened my question. But what I meant initially was a lot of the agencies we work with, they look at their cost as about 15% out of budget. Let's say the budget is $5,000 a month. That's it.
Yep.
So they're saying, okay, our cost is 15%. We want 20% profit. It's 30%. We're going to charge 35% out of the $5,000 is going to go to me, to my agency. Yeah. So I'm going to charge like $1,600. I'm going to keep out of the $5,000 budget. That's my structure.
So again, I think that type of thing could get very messy. So it used to, let's say you go back to the agency world in the 50s and the 60s, Madison Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
They used to just charge a commission on media, 15% of media. So if American Express was spending $1 billion a year with Ogilvy, then Ogilvy was charging $150 million. It didn't matter what Ogilvy's staffing costs were. This is why these advertising icons got so rich and made so much money, because as long as they had a good relationship with the advertiser would continue spending money, and they charge a 15%. They earned a 15% commission.
Right.
That changed. A lot of that changed, where procurement departments at these advertisers started looking at these numbers and said, "You guys are making way too much money. Instead, we'll pay you 15% on top of what it costs you to service the account." So now, instead of earning $150 million, right? If Ogilvy had 4 people earning an average of $50,000 a year, that's a $200,000 cost, right? They're now earning whatever, $40,000, $50,000.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to earn 50 grand instead of 150 million. And like these things were actually happening. But here's the point, like over there, like there's nothing wrong with doing what's called cost plus. So you go to a company, says, here's my budget, 10 grand, and we're going to run here, there, and whatever. And we need you to have a graphic design team. Okay. So the agency puts together our cost. It's going to cost us in overhead, $5,000 a month to service the account. So we want $750 profit on top of whatever, it's going to, so it's like, that's fine. But then you have to be very open and very clear with your books, right? Like that's, because in order for you to charge a cost plus basis, you have to be able to prove and substantiate your claim to what it's costing you. Now, this gets very tricky in the types of agencies that you're talking about, which is like we're taking on clients spending $2,000, $5,000 a month. I think it's almost impossible because
Yeah, no, they simplify it. They just say, look, this is my cost. Take it or leave it. Kind of that situation, less an open eye into the books that they're running.
right. So that's sort of what we do now. We have what we call it's called a minimum retainer. So we'll say, look, we don't put together a team and bring on a new account unless we're able to bill $4,000, $5,000 a month in management fees as a base retainer, right? So if your budget is $5,000, it doesn't matter. Like, we're still going to charge you $5,000, and we tell clients it doesn't make sense to hire us if your budget's $5,000. What we've done is we have a network of partners that are freelancers, smaller agencies. They're configured in a way to offer smaller services that's not as expensive. When we hire an account, when we bring on a new account, the way we assemble our teams with contractors, with our in-house strategists, it just ends up costing us more, where it doesn't make sense for us to bring on the client for less than, let's say, a $4,000, $5,000 a month retainer fee, because otherwise we're not making money. And we're very transparent about that with our prospects. And we say, look, like, we're probably not the best. It's probably an overkill for what you need right now. What you need is just a very talented freelancer or a small agency that could give the attention that you need without bringing together the whole team and a strategist and a market research thing and these other pieces that are more relevant to larger businesses that have more, dynamic campaigns.
Right. So I know you Adventure is working with a lot of type of niches. Like, I think I read on your site 75 unique industries. Do you find, or do you have tips to recommend our listeners about the best niches to go after, if there is such a thing, where it comes to local businesses?
When it comes to local businesses specifically?
Yes, I would imagine that 99%, at least those who are running through our platform, is almost all local.
Okay, so I think one of the best local verticals would be education. It's one of my favorite on a local and national level. So schools, and most schools today actually are a hybrid of local and national advertising. One, because they try to attract students from abroad and from throughout the country, but also because they have online programs. But generally speaking, higher education is just flush with cash, right? They have more money than they know what to do with. Their marketing departments are a mess. They're ancient. And if you could deliver a pitch that says, look, we're going to do performance marketing. Performance marketing means that we're going to be held accountable for results. You want more admissions forms? We have the tools to advertise online to specific people, the types of people you want to submit requests for enrollment forms. And it's going to be performance based. We're going to understand how many leads and forms and enrollments we're anticipating based on any given budget. We'll discuss all of that. So, but I think higher education is great.
Awesome.
At a local level.
Okay. Now, let's say our agencies do want to build, a quick campaign on Google to attract leads for their agency. Like you said, you used to do, you're not doing anymore. But let's say, they're okay with a $2,000 to $5,000 budget. They're okay with the smaller budget local campaigns. Can you kind of structure for us what should they do in the campaign? Kind of big buckets.
Yeah. So you want to start with those bottom funnel searches. So if you're a Google Ads specialist or a Google Ads agency, you want to be targeting people looking for Google Ads companies, Google Ads specialists, Google Ads agencies, Google Ads freelancers, things like that. And then the same thing goes for PPC, pay-per-click, or even digital advertising help, digital advertising agency. Now, the main thing to realize is that these clicks are expensive. These are competitive, expensive clicks. You could be expecting to pay $50 to $80 a click, right? So now you have a serious question. How many of those clicks are going to turn into a lead? And how many of those leads are you going to turn into a client? So you have to run the math to see if, look, even in any realm, this could back out for you. Now, you're never going to evaluate this based on the first month's management fee. You have to say, okay, if I retain my client for a year, because that's how the reason why these clicks are expensive is because your competitors are looking at it that way. It goes back to some of earlier in the conversation.
Yeah.
So if you're charging $500 a month, let's say you just say $1,000 a month, that's your retainer fee. So your revenue from a client, if you retain them for a year, is $12,000. Now, what are you taking home? Like, what are you putting in your pocket out of that $12,000? Is your margin 50%? Is it 75%? Like, what 25%? What's your margin? So if you're $12,000, let's say 25% is profit, $3,000 is going into your pocket. So $3,000. So $3,000 is your break-even point to sign a client. Now, I would recommend just be willing to spend up to $3,000 to sign a client then, right? So now you could get into the game a little bit. So if you're spending $500 a click, maybe 10, maybe 1 in 10 submits a form. Maybe if your website's really good. Like if your website's really good, you have good case studies, you have good content, you're making your pitch strongly and clearly, right? Let's just say 1 in 10. So now you spend $500 on a lead. Let's say you close 1 in 4 leads into a paying client at $1,000. So now you spent $2,000 to attract a new client. If you retain the client for a year, you've earned $1,000 in profit. Now, all of that math is a little cold and it's not very exciting. But what I think agencies have to understand is that there's just a snowball effect and ripple effect of getting clients, learning that you're just not going to anticipate. It never works with the mathematical computation that you use to benchmark a project or benchmark an initiative. You get more clients, whether you're break even, you lose some money, it's good to have clients, you get referrals, you start learning, you get better at what you do, new doors open up to you. All these different things that you would never expect are going to happen if you're willing to do something consistently, even if it doesn't seem very exciting. Because to run a Google Ads campaign with those numbers, right, to generate $1,000 over the course of a year is not exciting. Although I would say go into it with all your heart. I would be the first person to recommend someone do that.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. But are you using numbers that you remember also from your experience, or are you just throwing out,
No, these clicks will absolutely cost $50 to $80 a click. And that was a couple of years ago. They'll probably be more now.
So actually, if the same agency has 50% profit margins, they'll actually be making $4,000 in that example, which sounds a bit better. But still, you're saying in any case, it's a ripple effect, and I completely agree with you. Once you start growing your agency, doing more content, doing more initiatives, talking with more people, getting more referrals, it has some sort of black mojo associated with it that helps push everything up.
Exactly.
So for agencies, a lot of our agencies do a lot of things outside advertising, reputation management, content marketing, SEO, these kind of things. You're basically saying, okay, do you have any tool to recommend for them to choose the right words? Would you say to somebody who is not a Google expert, but has an agency, do your own Google advertising or hire another small agency to do it for you?
I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of my answers, it depends. Like if the person is savvy enough and I would recommend just doing it on your own. If you're having a small agency and no one's going to care about your money as much as you do. So if you could do it on your own and you feel like you could do it competently, it's not rocket science to figure out or to at least give it a test. Then do it. Then do it on your own for sure. If you're looking at Google Ads and the stuff seems totally foreign and overwhelming, then hire someone to test it for you. Again, it's not going to work for everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. Like I said, it's not a great equalizer. It's not an equal playing field. Half of my time dealing with prospects, I'm telling them that you should not be advertising on Google. It's not going to work. There's a reason why it hasn't worked. And they come to us, look at our campaign. And it's like, this campaign's not that bad. Your business is bad. There's 20 things you need to do to make your business more efficient and your website better and your experience more customer centric. And the reason why you're getting knocked out of auctions and you're not converting isn't because of your last agency or your Google Ads campaign structure. It's because at the end of the day, you're selling to people, and Google's technology is being leveraged by smart people ruthlessly pursuing business excellence.
That's scary, but it's true. And thank you for that. Okay. When you look at Google advertising, you look at Facebook advertising, kind of the duopoly, and we're almost done, by the way. I know we're limited on time. Where do you see that going in 5 years? Do you think we're going to see just more of the same, or are we expecting some sort of dramatic shift in advertising?
I think both. I think over the next 5 years, you'll see a further concentration into Google and Facebook and Amazon, if you want to bring Amazon in, because Amazon is a huge piece of that puzzle. Maybe it's a triopoly, but certainly with Google and Facebook, we're going to continue to see more and more advertising dollars, especially over the next 5 years. It's hard for me to imagine anything changing that. It's just so powerful, it's so effective. But I think with the changing sentiments around privacy and around tracking and all of this dialogue, conversation, conflict, and tension, what I expect is we're going to fall back more on contextual advertising. Whereas we're doing less of this type of thing where we're saying based on your browsing activity, your credit card data, it's like more based on what information you're consuming now and where you are now at the time of the ad impression. I think that's going to be a bigger drive. And I think agencies are going to have to bring more insight to the table. Right now, an agency could say, okay, I'm going to plug into a demand side platform. I'm going to plug into a tech company. I'm going to throw in some keywords, and it's very little insight. But I think agencies are going to start having to understand who these customers really are. Why are they reading this article on the Wall Street Journal? Why are they reading Architectural Digest? What is it about them? What do they like? What are their life experiences? Why does this product or this service matter? And I think that's going to become more of a differentiating factor between successful agencies and unsuccessful agencies over the next 5 years, because we're not going to have as much of this first party or third party cookie-based individualized tracking to rely on.
So it's going to go back basically to more psychological, old school type of marketing like it was before we had all that data streamed into us. Okay,
that's what I think.
Cool. Great. So thank you very much, and for that answer. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to it, by the way. I know I am, going back to being more creative and analyzing and less data. It actually depends who you're talking with. Our last portion of this discussion is a rapid Q&A. I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. I need fast answers. The questions are in no way edgy, but if you feel uncomfortable with any of them, just say pass. Okay?
Okay.
Did you get along with your parents growing up?
Sometimes.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
Do you have a pet?
No.
Do you have kids?
Yes.
How old were you when your first kid was born?
28.
When do you wake up?
4:30.
When do you go to bed?
Between 10 and 12.
Ideal vacation?
Being home with my wife and kids out of the house.
Being home with my wife and kids out of the house. That's a brain twister. Are you a man of faith?
Yes. Sometimes.
Okay. Excellent. Isaac, I know you are putting a lot of content out there. Do you want the listeners to go to a specific URL maybe to kind of listen to your stuff, learn from you? I know you have a lot of great content. Is there something specific you want to mention?
We have a new podcast ourselves called the How to Hide a Dead Body podcast. You could find it on Spotify, on Apple Music, not Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. But if you just to keep track of the content that we're doing, is you can go to our site at ventureppc.com. But I would also highly recommend checking out a book we recently published called Join or Die: Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation, written by Patrick Gilbert, our COO. And it's a really thorough masterclass on all the strategies that we leverage for our clients. It's available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and audiobook. And it's a great read. I mean, I wrote the foreword, so if you don't want to read the whole book, you just want to read the foreword, it's worth it to buy it just for the foreword.
Hey, can you say the name again?
Join or Die: Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation.
Okay, guys, go and find it on Amazon. So Isaac, excuse me. Thank you very, very much for all your answers today. I really appreciate it. You've been wonderful. And thank you for being with us.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Your host has been Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com.